Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 31, The Dreamer Awakens, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, 2 weeks back now, I think. It was Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 30, Sins of the Arrogant. Yes. I have been told that the people that Combia and his mother saved, in particular Javona, are Genestealer cult members. I had no idea. I had no idea whatsoever that they were part of the Genestealer cult. I was surprised when I read the comments in the comment section. And guys, you must remember that I'm not an expert in Warhammer 40K or an expert in Star Wars universe. You know, I'm still getting used to it all, and I'm mainly a casual viewer. I'm not someone who knows everything back to front. So don't be surprised if I don't know things about Star Wars, I don't know things about Warhammer 40K. I honestly had no clue that Javona was part of the Genestealer cult. She has to go. She has to go. However, I am still on the side of Ahsoka Tano when she, you know, advised the Jedi Order as well as the clone troops to focus on saving the civilians from these death camps instead of fighting against the Imperium of Man. At first, I supported Mace Windu with his plan of taking something valuable from the Imperium of Man, and that would bring them to the negotiating table. I did support Mace Windu. However, after seeing what's happening in the death camps and, you know, I just couldn't stomach it. You know, I really just could not agree with what was happening there. And definitely I am shifting sides. I'm taking the side of Ahsoka Tano. Yes, it might be, you know, wrong or maybe ignorant because of what we've just, you know, witnessed with Javona, her being a Genestealer cult member. And, you know, yes, the Imperium of Man have the right of it in terms of destroying Javona and all those Genestealer cult members. Yes, I agree. However, there are other Xeno races that don't, you know, they don't have to suffer this way. They have no right, no business being in something like this at all. So I still support Ahsoka Tano's side of things about rescuing the civilians, rescuing those who are in these concentration camps. But yeah, that story, I'm putting it aside now. Yes, what else happened? T'Pol, the Jedi, T'Pol is dead. Balaba also died, succumbing to her wounds. T'Pol had something important to say. I'm not entirely sure what exactly. He was talking about an empire that's going to take over the galaxy, and it's not the Imperium of Man, and it's not what's happening with the Galactic Republic. It's another empire, so I'm not entirely sure where was he going, what was he trying to say. He died before he could really, you know, further explain what he meant. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the future with his information. What else? The sister Legatine Reyna Ordain was fighting against Jedi Knight Ayala. And yeah, that was an epic fight on that gunship. It was amazing. That battle was amazing. They got separated after the gunship crash landed. Ayala is still trying to push forward against the Imperium of Man. She's even using Juggernaut personnel carrier tanks onto the battlefield. And Sister Reyna Ordain has also been fighting in these Juggernaut tanks, killing over 300 people alone. You know, the incompetency of these clone troops sometimes. Like, they should have shot at her as the moment she went into the glass, into the control room of the Juggernaut. They should have shot at her instead of looking at her with gawking eyes like, oh my gosh. You know, I was really frustrated with those guys there. But yeah, she killed a lot of clone troops in one of the Juggernaut tanks, and she's continuing on with her advance against the Galactic Republic soldiers. And what else happened? Oh yes, Davik Thum and his Crimson Razors have begun exterminatus across the Confederacy space in terms of the different planets that they control, and it's not looking good. In fact, it's not looking good anywhere on the Star Wars side of things. Whether you're part of the Republic or whether you're part of the Confederacy, it's not looking good. The Imperium of Man continues to be pushing further and deeper and far more violently than ever before. You know, these guys are not stopping. It's not looking good. I'm just wondering what is General Grievous, what is Count Dooku, and whoever's left of the separatist leadership, I don't know who's left, are going to do about this situation, because many of their planets are being destroyed. Billions of their citizens are being killed. It just doesn't look like there's going to be any way of salvaging this situation for the Confederacy. But let's see. And where is Emperor Palpatine? I mean, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine with his 8K, victory fleet. Where are they? We need those 8,000 vessels here. We need them, because this is bad. This is really, really bad. On Axum, it's bad. In the Confederacy, it's bad. So where is this guy? Yeah. Okay, let us continue with episode 31. The Dreamer Awakens. 3, 2, 1, go. Many years ago, 14 hours after the conclusion of the Battle of Hypori, 2166 BBNY. Many years ago. Okay.
The room was dark before Dooku entered it, encased in a thick miasma of shadow, which the opening of the door cut into, light from the corridor beyond scattering darkness which collapsed into the silhouette of the former Jedi Master. The fleeing shadows did not have to go far, harboring in his body as well as within his mind. His steps were equal parts dignity and devious pride, his straight back giving no sign of the tremendous weight he carried, the lives of countless billions born in his right hand, the ultimate fate of untold trillions cradled in his left. As a Jedi, he had served as defender to these things, both soldier and fortification against the powers of change and violence. Or so he had thought. Yet, even before that illusion had been shattered, when he had been fully under the seductive thrall of the Jedi purpose, he had never felt as he did now. For now, he was no mere defender, though that title too still crowned his name. No, now he was Lord, Judge, Master, Persecutor, Savior, Destroyer, and Defender. He was Sith. And to the meager mortals who gathered under the mantle of his power, he was as a god, and that was a weight the Jedi would simply never know. And he was not even the mightiest god. That particular deity was, as yet, hidden, enthroned as Lord of Dooku's New Order from behind a veil of lies and insidious secrets. A veil that the Dark Master now parted as the door closed behind the Sith apprentice. For a brief time, the darkness repossessed the space, slithering hatefully into those places which had been taken from them by the light beyond the doors, only to shrink back, fleeing into long shadows as the bright blue image of their master appeared in the center of the room.
Darth Sidious.
Dooku allowed the aforementioned weight to carry him gracefully down to the ground, kneeling and bowing his head before the robed holographic image of Darth Sidious. "My master," said the Count. "Rise, Darth Tyrannus."
I don't really like that name, you know. Darth Tyrannus. It just doesn't suit. I know Count Dooku. You know, I've always heard of him being called as Count Dooku, never Darth Tyrannus. It's very rare. So yeah, to hear his Darth name, it's just, it doesn't have the same sort of impact. Darth Tyrannus. Ugh.
I have finished observing the results of today's battles, specifically Hypori. Give me your opinions of the events that have transpired," said the Dark Lord of the Sith. Dooku rose just as smoothly as he had descended, his eyes meeting those of his master. "For the Confederacy, a day of dubious gains and losses, with one particular victory of note. Even those among the Separatist Senate seeking to downplay the recent victories will find it hard to ignore or dismiss the successful reveal of our newly deployed and empowered Supreme Commander. He acquitted himself most impressively, both as a leader of the droid forces and as a combatant against the Jedi."
Are they talking? Is he talking about General Grievous as the Supreme Commander of the Confederacy forces? I think so.
"I have no doubt that his involvement will lead to many more victories for the Confederacy and even more dead knights," he said. "That is very good news for the CIS's war effort. But what about the master plan? How does this bode for our future empire?" asked Sidious. Dooku paused to consider for a moment, answering carefully but honestly. "In the short term, this is precisely what we need. The Republic may have taken Munilist, but with the preservation of Hypori and the offensive we shall soon launch from there, the balance of the war should remain poised on a knife's edge, further cutting into the Republic's morale, and thus enabling you to pass the reforms you need, while all eyes watch the war," said the Sith apprentice. "And what of the long term?" asked the Sith Lord. Dooku nearly winced, but kept his face perfectly placid and controlled. "In truth, I am not certain that there is a place for our new Supreme Commander in the regime we are building. Nor do I have a tremendous amount of faith that we will be able to stretch his service to the conclusion of the war."
General Grievous is not going to make it into the Empire? Oh wow, okay. Well, yeah, he has been coughing a lot, actually, throughout, for as long as I can remember, from Revenge of the Sith and also in the Clone Wars. He's always coughing. He's always coughing. But his loyalty, I don't think you can question his loyalty. You know, he's always been loyal to Count Dooku. He hasn't shown any sort of emotion or some sort of thought of betrayal, towards Count Dooku or to the Confederacy. So I think his loyalty is always going to be there. But yes, his health is deteriorating, I think. The man has been coughing day in, day out, non-stop. Yeah.
While he is a singularly effective weapon, his loyalty is uncertain. He admitted, "Elaborate," commanded the Dark Lord. As you well know, we altered him, both physically and metaphysically, to better suit our needs. He is a powerful weapon now, more so than he ever was. Though he has no connection to the Force, his combat instincts are more refined than any I've ever seen. And thanks to the enhancements we've made to his mind, he has quickly surpassed even my most prodigious Force-sensitive apprentices when it comes to the mastery of lightsaber forms, both of the traditional order and of the Sith. The Count explained, "I am well aware of all of this. Do not waste my time, Tyrannus. If I had a desire to bandy meaningless words, I'd return to the games of the Senate. The good general was never lacking in lethal ability, even before we augmented him. Those benefits, however useful, were always secondary to their true nature, making sure we can control him. We've sequestered him from organic soldiers who may be subject to his charisma. Through cybernetic augmentation and chemical therapy, we have cleansed him of his past. Through sorcery and the power of the dark side, we have ingrained within him a hatred of the Jedi that burns as brightly as my own. Are you suggesting that this is not enough?" Hissed Sidious. "Forgive me, my master. Yes, I fear that there may be some element we neglected, or perhaps we underestimated his will. He is meant to believe, as most of the galaxy does, that he is a droid. But when I presented him with that lie, he rejected it almost immediately, and very violently.
Okay. I don't think we've actually, or should I say, I have actually heard of General Grievous, thinking about his existence, whether he's biological or is he a droid or what is he. I don't think I've actually heard him talk about himself, as a being. So yeah, this is new to me, especially coming from Count Dooku talking like this, and the fact that Count Dooku is saying that General Grievous showed anger and violence towards him. That is also something new. So yeah, okay, General Grievous. I guess there are some things that I don't know about you, things that you talk about and think about behind closed doors.
General hates the portions of his body we have mechanized, and forced on me a concession, a lie, that I would not alter his mind. I had hoped that by enlarging and exacerbating the nerves in his brain responsible for rage and anger, I would succeed in subtly diverting him from the aspects of his former cunning which might threaten us or uncover his past. I fear this may have only given him a Sith-like sense of clarity, however, as he has begun to dress himself and his Magna Guard in the cloaks and robes of his former people's warrior caste. I have even begun to suspect that he remembers his name, his true name. If this is allowed to continue, then it is only a matter of time before he begins to recall more poignant parts of his own history.
General Grievous has another name? His true name? Okay. So, are you guys going to tell us? Count Dooku, are you going to tell us?
Pieces of who he was which may surface over time and sway his allegiance from us and our goals. While it is true that we could deactivate all of his forces remotely should he attempt anything too roguish. The Count began to say, "The deactivation of so many of our droids, even if only temporarily, could greatly hinder the progression and stability of our grand plan. And you are certain that the transfusion of midichlorian-rich blood into his system has done nothing?" asked the Dark Lord. Count Dooku shook his head. "I am afraid not, Master. The midichlorians died hours after the transplant, and at no point did he seem to even brush against any sensitivity to the Force." He said in answer, "A pity. We shall start again, then. What is the General's current condition?" asked the Dark Lord. "He is currently dormant. While he sustained no significant injuries during the battle, he did expend a tremendous amount of power. He should already be fully charged once more, but I've ordered his crypt watcher to keep him unconscious and in diagnostic mode until further notice." "Good. Shut him down, but do not kill him. Place him into storage, ready for deployment at our command. We may yet have use of him, particularly should his replacement prove unworthy."
Replacement? What do you mean replacement? And what do you mean by putting him into storage? He's here right now. Okay, maybe because this is many years ago. Yeah, because in the beginning of the video, the title said many years ago, 14 hours after the Battle of Hypori. Yes. Okay.
Ordered Sidious. It will be done, my master. However, I must warn you that the rest of the Separatist Council will wonder at the sudden disappearance of their Supreme Commander, and finding a proper replacement for Grievous will not be easy or quick. Our forces will be headless for a time," said the Count. "The Senate shall not wonder at all about this, because to them it will appear as though their general never left. No one will know that we have replaced him, for the new general will carry Grievous's face and name. And his absence will not be a problem, for I already have a candidate in mind."
What? So you're telling me that the General Grievous we know from Revenge of the Sith, from the Clone Wars, is not the real General Grievous? And the real General Grievous is in storage or stasis? So does the second General Grievous know that there is another General Grievous, or maybe they've kept that as a secret from him as well? You know, they wouldn't want to tell General Grievous that actually you're not the true General Grievous, that we have another person in stasis who is the true General Grievous. Oh my gosh. Wow. Alright.
A Kalish warrior, whom you should find much more malleable, said the Dark Lord, a static hologram appearing beside his own, depicting a tall Kalish warrior holding a sword, his body already pocked and marked with copious cybernetic augmentations. "Your wisdom endlessly astounds me, my master. Where did you come across such a man? What is his name?" asked the apprentice. "His name is unimportant. He shall be Grievous. As you can see, he already seeks the strength of our enhancements, using them to fuel his already existing vendetta against the Jedi who turned him away at their temple gates. He blames them for his lack of connection to the Force, a source of envy and resentment which you will find a rich resource when reshaping him."
So General Grievous went to the Jedi Order or to the Jedi Temple to what, demand that they teach him how to use the Force when he's not a Force wielder? Wow, that's weird. That's really weird, General Grievous. I don't even know what's your real name. They won't tell us your real name. Darth Sidious won't tell us your real name, so I'll just have to keep calling you General Grievous, even though we know that there's another person called General Grievous. Hey, this is like a drama show, guys. It's like Bold and the Beautiful or Days of Our Lives, you know. You believe that the person you see in front of you is your son, but actually your son is in a hospital in a coma, in a coma. Yes, you know, he's in the hospital, he's in a coma, and this guy who comes to your house every time and you believe that he's your son is actually not your son. Your real son is in hospital. He believes he's your son too. It's a mess. It's a mess.
His record as a warlord speaks for itself. He should suffice. I will leave it to you to ensure that he does, said the Dark Lord. Count Dooku bowed deeply, wading into the clawing shadows as he displayed his submission to the greater god. It will be as you command. Will there be anything else you desire of me? He asked. Yes. This time, make him smaller, weaker, said the Sith Lord. Master? Asked Count Dooku, looking up quizzically. This new candidate is composed of envy and endless vainglory. I fear that if you make him as efficient and deadly as his predecessor, he may decide, erroneously, that he no longer needs us. Shape him, train him, but make sure he never forgets his place. We are the scions of the Force. Even the Jedi have worthier claim to greatness than our new general, even if they lack the wisdom or will to seize it, said Sidious. As you wish, breathed the gray-haired Count, standing up straight as the light of the hologram began to die. Good. And remember, Tyrannus, we must not wake Sheelal, unless we have no choice.
Sheelal. And that's the name of the Grievous in stasis. Okay. Sheelal. Shocking.
Should he realize our treachery, then he may decide that the difference between our order and that of the Jedi is too slight in his small mind to warrant anything but the same hatred. Best we not risk his rampancy, unless we must. And with those final words, the fate of Quaymanjai Sheelal, the dreaming demigod of war, was set. Or so it would have been, were it not for the twisting of fate which would occur nearly 4 years later. Sheelal had been destined to dream until his death, when the shutdown signal came for all the droids and deactivated his life support systems, leaving him to die, alone and hidden away beneath the vast factories of Hypori.
But things have changed. Things have changed as soon as the Imperium of Man entered into the galaxy.
But in this new future, the deactivation signal did not come as it should have. Instead, a different signal was received. One which drained the fluid out of his holding tank, and which triggered the automatic assembly of his original 10-foot-tall body. One which woke the grieving dreamer, and began a new nightmare.
Guys, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. So, the General Grievous we know is a weaker and smaller version of the original General Grievous. The original General Grievous is 10 foot tall. He's stronger. He is far more, powerful with the lightsaber fighting styles. And he exceeds all expectations that Count Dooku has set for it, or for him, the original General Grievous. And now Darth Sidious has decided to put this General Grievous into stasis and bring forth a new person who's going to become the new General Grievous, who is weaker, and maybe that's why he's always coughing. I think this is, has to deal with what Darth Sidious has requested from Count Dooku, to make him weaker, so that if he should rebel against them, he'll be easy to be cut down by Darth Sidious or Count Dooku. This is surprising. This is really, really surprising. But now they're letting him go, knowing fully well the implications of their actions, because the original General Grievous does not seem to play the same side as Count Dooku and Darth Sidious, so he could easily betray them at any moment. They must be desperate. They must be desperate to reactivate this General Grievous. Considering what's happened to the Confederacy, I think I can assume that it's going bad for them. They have no choice, they have no option but to reactivate him and bring him into service. Whether he follows their orders, whether he continues to work for them, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But wow. Had to get another cup of hot water. Oh, this is shocking news. Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
The second man who would don the title of Grievous steepled his metal fingers, watching the holo displays before his still flesh and blood eyes, showing him the progress of the battle. The enemy he now faced was gutsy beyond anything the Republic had ever shown him, short of the Jedi generals such as Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And even they would not have attempted something as suicidal as this. The Imperials, the new enemy, were a foe which stood distinctly apart from the Republic, and had lobbed a relatively small but powerful fleet into the center of the Confederacy. The general knew not how they had managed to sneak around all known hyperspace corridors. But whatever their means, it had taken the home defense fleet completely by surprise. That, paired with the use of their devastatingly powerful and, to this point, unknown weaponry, led to the utter catastrophe which greeted him when General Grievous had finally arrived at the defense. Even before his arrival, the general had been fine-tuning the counterattack, using existing communications with the besieged fleet and planet to better coordinate his approach. More and more ships lost contact with him throughout the process. Even the planet itself ceased outbound communications. But the information they had relayed had been enough. Grievous ended the general recall order, instead mustering his forces in a proper formation within a neighboring system, instead of feeding the ships, fleet by fleet, to the enemy combatants. Additionally, he was briefed on the use of the most devastating weapon wielded against their local forces around Raxus. An armament that was being referred to as the Star Launcher. This
Star Launcher? Must be really powerful explosive then. Huh, okay.
Weapon could strip the shields and melt the hulls of even the most powerful Confederate ships. But it appeared to be a missile or projectile of some kind, and was used sparingly as opposed to continuously. To avoid unnecessary vulnerabilities to the weapon and escape the fate of much of the home fleet, the general broke from convention and divided his forces into many loosely packed fleet groupings. Confident that any single detonation of the enemy star launchers would be mitigated thanks to their scattered but uniform approach, the general ordered his forces into the Raxus system. appearing out of hyperspace in a somewhat disjointed sphere around the Imperial forces present there, and beginning an immediate approach.
Oh, we're gonna have a space battle, I think. But this image is cool. Seeing the Imperium of Man ships. It looks like they're glossing the planet. It kind of reminds me of Halo. Yeah, they look like they're glossing the planet here. That's cool. Kubik, well done.
Yet, even before the battle was purposefully joined, Grievous saw the damage that had already been done, and which continued to be inflicted on the brutalized, smoldering surface of the Confederacy's capital world. The enemy ships were divided, with one portion attacking the surface of the planet with circling orbital bombardments, while the rest of the fleet stood over them and engaged with the tatters that remained to represent the original defense fleet.
Let's do it, General Grievous. Onward to battle.
And the scant few forces and ships which had arrived ahead of the general himself. Individual short-range distress calls from the dying multitudes of Raxus Secundus flooded into his comm systems. The Imperial fleet making no attempt to intercept or silence the cries for help which echoed out from the capital. They wanted the newcomers to hear them, and Grievous knew precisely why, as he himself had performed similar maneuvers in the past. Any Jedi or overly loyal commander would rush to the defense of their besieged world, would cut through losses and disadvantageous approaches just for a chance at rescuing some of the world's inhabitants.
True.
Or, at least, some of their leadership. This tactic had served him well within Operation Dirge's Lance, and he knew better than to waste his efforts on such an obvious and pointless trap. He was the supreme commander. None would question him, not even his name, and so he did not mourn the loss of the Separatist Council.
Cold. He is cold, guys. Oh!
Instead, he silently thanked them for their sacrifice as the enemy fleet found itself in a complete disadvantage. Divided and expecting a reaction born of loyalty, compassion, or surprise.
And Count Dooku is still there, right? I think he's still on the planet. Wow, he's gonna throw him under the bus too? Damn, Grievous.
Instead, he gave them cold, brutal cunning, and directed the approach of his ships towards the active battle fleet first, completely ignoring the sieging ships as he continued to encircle the entire remaining fleet. His cruisers and destroyers took damage as they closed in, and, being spread out, forced the Imperials to pick them off a few at a time. And the fleet at Grievous's command was many multitudes of times larger than that which they faced. Losses were all but irrelevant. Even so, the Imperial ships gave much better than they got, and their shields and armor seemed particularly thick and troublesome to destroy.
I guess the CIS haven't upgraded their vessels with better shielding, better weaponry systems to go toe-to-toe with the Imperium of Man battle groups or battle space fleets. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I think General Grievous has something up his sleeve.
But to this problem, Grievous had the solution of nigh unending separatist vulture droids, and swaths of disposable droid-crewed destroyers to shelter his cruisers behind. Gradually, but surely, the battle began to tilt away from the Imperials who were attacking, forcing their bombing fleet to disengage, though they left precious little of the world they had been sieging intact behind them. The Imperials were packed and forced closer and closer together, their sturdy ships acquiring blazing wounds which bled fire and steel into the void. As, one after another, the smaller giants among them began to crack apart and break. When enough of such vessels met their burning end, the clustered, surrounded Imperials gave up their attack and made a break for the nearest Lagrange point in the system. Grievous reinforced the wall of ships they chose to breach, but wisely withheld his own vessel from the forming blockade. Had he not, he would have been consumed as several of the Imperial vessels let loose their star launchers, birthing
I can see why they call it that. Oh my gosh. So bright.
a series of 3 nova-like explosions which entirely cleared the Separatist ships in their path. The display almost humbled the general, and suddenly drove a deep hunger and, indeed, envy into the cybernetic heart of the nearly droid commander.
He wants it.
To have such power for his own vessel, to command those weapons for his own cause, would be like spitting in the face of the Jedi Order itself.
You're still focusing on the Jedi Order, General Grievous? No, man. No. Leave the Jedi alone. You have far bigger issues to deal with. Far larger issues. You can't still be thinking about your enemy you're fighting 2 weeks ago. This is different. This is different, okay?
Every technology which he could acquire and use against the hated Republic Guardians was an unspeakable boon to General Grievous, who took each one as an example of the Order's misplaced faith in the Force. It was with thoughts of power which might be his that he chose to chase down the fleeing ships, limiting the damage he inflicted as he commenced firing into their backs and engines specifically in the hopes of crippling or capturing at least one.
They would rather die than to be captured by Xeno filth. They would rather die.
But each maimed ship he managed to disable seemed only to last for minutes before detonating, even when focused fire was drawn from the clipped craft and sent to other targets, creating vast explosions which burned and devoured the scattered Separatist vessels which attempted to surround them. It seemed as though they would leave nothing behind for the general.
But I'm sure you can scour the wreckage. You know, there will be some wreckage left behind from a scuttled vessel. So you can try and pick out whatever you can find from that. Yeah.
Besides the scrap and ruin of their smaller ships. Yet, just as the fleet was using its bizarre FTL travel to escape the system, his armada managed to, at last, wound one of the larger vessels unto uselessness, the cruiser being left behind as the rest of the alien fleet departed.
A whole cruiser. It must be your lucky day.
Seeming to scatter as soon as they were able. The remaining ship was 5 kilometers long and nearly 2 kilometers high. A crippled behemoth still firing with what weapons it had left, a bear amongst countless biting wolves, swiping while it could with claws that swung slower and slower with each pass.
I would say that it's a bear fighting off mosquitoes. It's fighting off hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes, or maybe bees, yeah, or wasps.
It was not long before the ship was coated in vulture and buzz droids, which made short work of its weapons systems and conventional defenses, leaving the ship helpless before the countless boarding actions which it would be subject to. Grievous watched from the command deck of his flagship as the operation to seize the vessel commenced.
But no. Why isn't the ship being scuttled by now? Why isn't it issuing a self-destruct? Or the warp jump drive, go critical and explode? Like all the other vessels. No, something is wrong here.
and was almost immediately stalled. The invader ship was almost literally packed with personnel, and most of them seemed armed and ready to fight and die to repel the droids which had come among them. Grievous left his machines to work and began to coordinate what was left of the fleet into search and rescue teams, each one seeking members of the Separatist Council, their backers, or their leader, Count Dooku. But such work was beneath him, and he was eager to go about the re-engaging of these new, exotic forces. But to re-engage them successfully, he would need not only the whole fleet he had gathered, but information on his foe which he currently did not have. Details on weapons, troops, muster locations, and bases of operation which would prove invaluable in his ability to coordinate a proper counterattack. He expected to find all of that information and much more upon the disabled enemy cruiser, and was more than dismayed when he returned from the previous task to find his machines had made precious little progress. The resistance coming from within the ship was stubborn and absolute. No terms of surrender were accepted by the Imperials, and no answer was given to the droids that were not voiced through the barrels of weapons and the finely edged blades of sparking and rumbling swords. While Grievous was made eager again by the thought of the useful scavenging he would be able to put to work for him once the defenders were dead and their weapons were his, the general's eagerness bred impatience with the methodical and often ineffective assaults the tactical droids were choosing to order. Each attack serving as a probe to teach the droids more about this previously unknown force, though not intentionally. They seemed bent on fighting to the death, and had prepared the internals of their ship for such a conflict, with warriors contesting the droids through the ship before falling back to positions that other, less combat-worthy members of the crew had fortified and made more defensible. By this system of vicious resistance, and then retreat to more and more difficult areas to attack, the progress of the tactical droids had been ground to a near standstill. In such times, Grievous knew exactly what he needed to do, gathering his robed Magna Guards and taking a shuttle to the besieged vessel personally. He sank into the Imperial defenses like a sharp dagger lancing into a gut.
I like this image. I like the battle droids. I think it's the B2s, right? Yeah, and the shooting at the barricades that the crewmen of this vessel have erected, and they're also using their las guns against the machines. Yeah, it's cool. This is nice. And it's like red. The entire theme in this image is red because the battle droids are shooting red color. And the clone troops also shooting red. Yeah, it's so nice. Cool.
Punching their ordered lines into only one section, their thinnest detected defense, and then funneling droidicas and commando droids in behind the enemy lines. All the while, the general ordered his main forces to hold back, harrying the enemy enough to keep the fight alive, but relieving the pressure to the point that they would have no need to fall back. And from there, the dominoes began to fall, as stalwart naval security officers suddenly found themselves surrounded and unable to withdraw, the pressure of the front lines redoubling when the special droid units had completed their tasks. The mostly civilian defenders and creators of the fortified positions behind them found only dismay and woe approaching their readied positions. The defenders being greeted not by the retreating line of their own forces, but by the mechanical march of General Grievous's droid army. Regardless, they fought stubbornly for many more minutes before they were unwound by the cunning of the droidified Supreme Commander of the Confederacy. Soon, the Imperial defenders were relegated to pockets of resistance, hemmed into corners, narrow corridors, and boxed into closed rooms, leaving the general free to march straight towards the bridge, flanked on either side by his mechanical bodyguards.
I don't know. I expected to hear about the Astartes coming in as well to help out these civilians, and not necessarily the crew members of this vessel who are defending these barricades. You know, Astartes, maybe Sisters of Battle, maybe some tech priests, or Skatari, you know, or Silent Sisters, or anyone, you know, but it's just civilians. And probably also the crew of the ship. Nah, something's wrong here. They should have scuttled the ship. From the get-go, they should have scuttled the ship. Or maybe they believe that they can fix the ship's warp drive engine before, you know, it gets too serious, before they overtake the entire ship. But they're heading for the command structure right now, for the control room. So, yeah, what is going on here?
They met with yet more resistance to the entryway to that bridge, but not nearly as much as he had expected to find. The defense seemingly composed of only 8 well-armed guards of the type he had already encountered aboard the ship. Their weapons could do nothing to droidica shields, apparently designed to not harm the ship around them as they battled, blasting with laser weapons and slug thrower scatter guns, all of which were ineffective at stopping their advance.
Slug thrower scatter guns, those must be shotguns. Yeah, okay.
And the advance of the troops behind them. It was not long before the doors to the bridge began to glow red hot, as 4 different sabers penetrated its surface and began to cut simultaneously through
Close the blast doors.
the metal, gradually forming a rectangular slice that Grievous kicked down contemptuously, striding inside with a cough and a hack, looking around at the bridge crew. They were all sheltering behind their stations and consoles, kneeling with their heads low, sidearms drawn and honed in towards the door.
This is cool. This is a tech marine. I think I've seen you before, though. This tech marine, he looks familiar. And then I think that's a commissar, the guy in black, and then the one in blue is definitely the captain of the vessel. Yeah. I can see with the hat as well. Oh, this is nice. Kubik, well done.
But Grievous barely noticed them. Instead, his attention was drawn towards the man in the center of the survivors, standing unafraid, not even indignant, massive arms folded behind his back, his still, straight body writhing with countless mechanical tendrils and arms which emerged from his enormous red armor. Standing beside this huge man, bracing a long, 2-handed weapon against the command chair of the ship, was a human who was dressed in navy blues, his bionic eye focused through the scope of his gun.
Which one of you is captain of this ship?
Grievous demanded as his droid guards filed into the space, filling one half of the room. "I am," said the man in blue, his voice tight, barely constraining his obvious hatred. This surprised Grievous somewhat. The man was half the size of the armored warrior who stood beside the ship's command chair. And, of the two, it was the former who seemed to be the most in command, not the latter.
To assume things in this particular situation is dangerous, General Grievous. Don't assume. Don't go on assumptions here. Just because this guy's bigger than the other guy does not mean that he's the leader of the vessel. Okay? And just because he's a human being and he looks like he's weak or soft, don't underestimate him. This captain might do something here and he'll surprise us all. So keep your eyes open and keep your mind open to all possibilities. Yeah. But this feels like a trap. He's been allowed to enter all the way into the control room. It's a trap. Because this tech marine should have been in the front lines, beating off these drones as they were entering into the ship. He should have been there in the front lines. There should have been, I don't know, some sort of further resistance than what we've been what General Grievous and his forces have been receiving outside. They've only been battling against civilians and some of the crew members of the ship. There's no one else on the ship. And he's been allowed to come all the way to the command room of the cruiser. It's a trap. And General Grievous is so blind by his desire for new technology and knowledge on this new force that he doesn't think about this, that this could be a trap, that it's all too easy. Or maybe it's just me, guys, but I just don't think that this is right. If you get what I mean. It just doesn't feel right. It's a trap. Yeah. I can bet my money on it right now. It's a trap.
Regardless, Grievous chose to address him.
Captain, your ship is disabled. Your crew are defeated. And dying at my hands. For your own sake, surrender this vessel to me, or I will kill every last Imperial here and ship your heads back to your retreating fleet in garbage bags.
Said the Confederate commander, speaking through a translator they had managed to compile through a protocol droid as the battle had raged on. I'd die 1,000,000 deaths before succumbing to the likes of you, Xenos scum. Your threats change nothing. Every man, woman, and child on this ship has been ready to die for the Emperor since the moment we were born. In victory or defeat, this is our destiny, and we will not shirk from it. The captain growled and spat, finger trembling around his trigger, but not firing.
Then you have chosen your fate.
The general pronounced, raising his arm and waving it forward as he stepped back. In response, the Magna Guard swept around him, coming forward to attack. The Imperials opened fire then, but had precious few seconds to make their shots count before the melee-center droids closed with them. Arms and heads were blown off as las guns and snub pistols blew molten chunks out of the droids.
That won't be enough.
Nearly every single one taking some sort of debilitating damage before crossing the distance, the bridge crew having picked their shots well. But it was far from enough. Headless Magna Guards proceeded as though nothing had happened. Those lacking arms instantly compensating, those deprived of their legs and lower halves crawling forward, hauling their electro staves in their wake. They slammed their weapons down into the men and women of the bridge, causing cybernetics to burst within the flesh which cradled them, driving brutal screams out of throats already sore from roaring commands, and stopping hearts which had been racing for hours. The droids succeeded in overtaking the crew in all places but one. The two Magna Guards which sought to subdue the armored man in the center found no such ease in their own assault. These two had taken some of the lightest damage, and as such came in fast and strong, whirling the poles of their weapons. Both were surrounded and entangled within an expanding mesh of mechanical tendrils as they approached. hardly able to come within weapons range of the bizarre warrior before they were pulled apart by his many arms, which coordinated their attacks in such a way as to avoid the biting sting of the ends of the electrostaves. He discarded the pieces by tossing them aside like junk, throwing one of the weapons he had taken from them, hurling it like a lance and aiming for the body of one of the Magna Guard droids who were beating the captain, chastening the officer with merciless strikes of their staves. The throw caught one in the chest, piercing all the way through with the force of its momentum, and spearing the other, pinning the droids to each other and tossing them off of the spasming captain. The Red Warrior followed that up by blasting the conjoined foes with a weapon he held within the slithering mass of his tendrils. The gun was another sort of slug Thor, which gave the sound of deep thunder with each discharge, blowing the guards to inert pieces before it was turned onto the others. All the while, the warrior barely seemed to budge, arms still folded behind his back, posture straight, gaze fixed on the general at all times. The Magna Guards attempted a valiant counter to this man's weapon, but any who could draw close were seized and torn apart, and the others were swiftly eliminated by the explosive ammunition of the thick gun. Even so, the droids had largely succeeded by the end of the scuffle, and all but the wounded captain and the unfazed Red Warrior lay dead or dying across the bridge. Despite this, the warrior did not pause the attack, becoming passive once the offending droids had ceased existing. Grievous coughed and laughed, stepping forward once again and drawing forth 4 lightsabers. He stood tall, his white and red cape falling away to reveal the whole of his towering mechanical body.
Well done, but your heroics end here. I have been personally trained in lightsaber combat by Count Dooku. Even the Jedi cannot stand before me.
I remember that line from Revenge of the Sith when Count Dooku is facing against not Count Dooku, General Grievous facing up against Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, Jedi fool, I've been taught by Count Dooku. And then he activates the lightsabers with these 4 arms. Yeah, nice times, good times. Okay, let's continue.
He said, his 2 arms splitting and dividing into 4, each one holding a lightsaber, all of which activated at once.
Excellent,
said the armored warrior.
What?
Grievous snapped back.
You wish to test yourself against the greatest warrior in the galaxy?
Oh, okay, General Grievous, the greatest warrior in the galaxy. Sit down. Sit down.
He asked, stalking forward cautiously. The Imperial warrior shook his head.
I was uncertain as to whether or not you were General Grievous. But I can confirm from this display that you are. With my enemy confirmed, I can at last begin the 3rd phase of the plan.
He told the alien general.
Plan?
Yeah, it's a trap.
What plan?
Grievous asked, and now it was the warrior's turn to laugh, or rather, chuckle mechanically through the speakers in his helmet.
Did you really think we were retreating from you? Do you think you will find our fleets fleeing back towards whatever territory you imagine we are protecting?
The Imperial asked General Grievous.
No. We are not retreating. We are scattering, forming battle groups. You see, it's not enough to decapitate you. You vile creatures, living in contradiction to the Omnissiah's laws, parading yourself in steel and circuit, whilst corrupting the divine intention of the motive force. No, we must obliterate you, utterly and entirely, so that none in this new, pathetic universe will ever think to construct such abominations ever again.
He said, kicking the remnants of a still sparking Magna Guard with his boot.
You rant and rave, but it means nothing. Even if your fleet has scattered, my fleet will follow them the moment we are done here. You will fare no better separated than you did together. Some worlds may burn, but so long as I live, the Confederacy lives.
The Confederacy depends on you alone? Oh no. Oh no.
Something you and your empire will soon learn and regret.
Spat the general, already creating a list of the most important worlds he would need to rush to defend as soon as he had this under control. But the Imperial warrior shook his large, helmed head.
What makes you think you will ever leave this ship? I have already ensured that you will die here, and your disgusting union of worlds will follow you into the grave,
said he.
I like this image. Kubik. Yeah. the Tech Marine, with all his tentacles, so high up, and General Grievous looking at him up like that. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Oh wow.
In response, Grievous growled and lunged forward. The instant that he did, the tendrils went into action, just as they had with his guards before him, wrapping and clamping around arms and legs, swarming over the alien's mechanical body. The general countered their frenzy by spinning his wrists, cleanly severing the many arms which had sought to dismantle him. The warrior broke his relaxed posture, throwing himself back and away from the reaching, burning blades of the lightsabers. His large slug thrower firing in rapid bursts towards the general, and striking his right set of arms, blowing them off his body and throwing him to the left. Grievous recovered swiftly, growling and coughing as he hucked one of his two remaining lightsabers towards the weapon, causing it to detonate as it was struck, the explosive bolts within combusting at the weapon's touch. Even as this happened, commando droids and droidicas trundled into the room, beginning to open fire on the Marine, distracting him as Grievous rose and saw how little effect the blaster bolts they fired had on his armor. Still, the heavier blasters of the destroyer droids did seem to shove and burn him, leaving molten dents and welts in the man's defensive plating with each successful strike they made. In response, several intact and half-severed tendrils reached for one of the shielded droids, those which moved too quickly, bouncing off of the radiant orb which surrounded the machine, while the slower ones succeeded in moving through. He twisted, lifted, and turned the droid, moving its gun's aim off of himself and using its protective body as a shield against the blaster fire of the others. Meanwhile, Grievous swept up one of the lightsabers dropped by his severed right arms, arming both of his remaining left limbs before jumping into combat again, driving the man back as he fended off the general's droids.
You are finished!
Grievous declared as he sliced away another large array of mechanical tentacles, kicking the warrior hard in the chest and throwing him against the wall, then slamming his wide, claw-like foot against him, pinning the Imperial warrior there. But the man only shook his head and released a contemptuous laugh. He lifted one of his true limbs, extending 3 fingers.
1. Attack the capital world of the Confederacy. 2. Lure the bulk of the Confederate fleet here.
He said, lowering 1 finger with each listed number.
And 3. Entrap you here. It was obvious from the moment you arrived, General, that you wanted to capture one of our ships. Know that, while it is my master and chapter that serve as the instruments of your annihilation, it is I, Brother Taslion of the Machine Fate, who is the architect of your destruction.
I remember you, Brother Taslion. It's a good plan. It's just that it is a waste of a very powerful vessel. It's a waste of a very powerful vessel and a waste of a lot of personnel aboard this vessel. Just to kill 1 person. Yes, I know General Grievous is very important to the Confederacy, very powerful, individual within the Confederacy army, but I think it's still a waste. A resource like this, you guys can't just build new ships just like that. You don't have the facilities you did in the Warhammer 40K Milky Way galaxy. You don't have those resources. You don't have those personnel. What you lose here permanently. It's not going to come back. So wasting a cruiser like this, it's a monumental waste in my books. But it seems like your plan is working. Let's see if it will be complete at the end.
You can no more destroy me than you can deny me this ship!
Grievous growled, raising his sabers. Taslion nodded.
It is so,
he said, and something emerged from his large mechanical power pack. Some kind of thick antenna with a flashing diode sphere protruding from the end. Grievous kicked away from the man, throwing himself back behind the droidicas, fully expecting the warrior to explode at any second. Instead, he stood fully, and as red lights began to flash across the bridge of the ship, and alarm sirens began to scream all throughout the vessel, Taslion spoke.
Enjoy the ship, General Grievous, and its last voyage into hell.
And with that final proclamation, the man seemed to sear and glow with energy. And then was gone. Vanished. Grievous bellowed a rasping roar of rage and jumped to stomp down on where Taslion had just been standing, sweeping his sabers around him in the hopes of catching the invisible Marine. But as he struck nothing but cold air, and the klaxons began to grow louder, he had a sudden, terrible epiphany. Taslion was not invisible. He was gone. It was never he who was going to explode. It was the ship!
Exactly. Exactly.
The methods and machinations of the enemy's ability to teleport were forgotten almost the instant they were realized. As Grievous looked around the ship and ran to one of the consoles.
You need to leave. Stop touching controls and looking for the deactivation button. You need to leave, General Grievous. Leave right now.
There, his translator showed him everything he needed to see. A warp core breach was imminent if action was not taken. Sabers tossed aside, 2 hands conjoining into one once more. The general began a frenzied tapping across the control console. attempting to do what was required to prevent this catastrophe from reaching its conclusion. But the moment he tried, his access was denied, and he almost smashed the console in frustration. That's when a groan had him turning his head around, noticing the wounded captain who yet remained alive.
You!
The general barked, stalking towards the man who slumped in the command chair and seizing him by the throat.
End this madness, or we will both die!
He ordered, throwing the captain against the console and then slamming his head down into it, pinning him there with one half of his remaining arm, while the other split and held a saber to the back of the man's neck, letting him feel the heat and burn of it. The captain gasped, voice pained, but smirked nonetheless, as he looked up at the machine monstrosity that was General Grievous, using his human eye to project his contempt as well as his resolve.
It is better to die for the Emperor than to live for yourself.
He pushed past clenched teeth. Grievous sliced the man's head off with a rage-filled bellow. He turned, bending down and hefting one of the electrostaves and making to throw it, aiming for the clear viewing ports in the front of the bridge.
This is what you should have done from the get-go. But here you are. General Grievous.
He began to speak as he did.
All forces, retreat from the ship, now!
He began. It was his final order, and it was incomplete, devoured by the sudden, cataclysmic ball of warp fire which burst the ship apart.
It's over.
Catching all the Confederate vessels which had been docked to it, and many of the others which were nearby in the wake of the screeching, mind-shearing blast. The trap was sprung. And with so many tactical droids caught in the explosion, the fleet of the Confederacy floundered. Even as Imperial warpcraft began to reach out, striding over the placid Sea of Souls as they honed in on those Confederate worlds which were most responsible for the production and control of the droid armies. Mechas 3, Utapau, Metalorn, Balmora, Gentis, Hypori, and many others soon played host to small Imperial battle fleets.
Did AFanWithTooMuchTime just say Hypori? Isn't that where the original General Grievous is based? Uh-oh.
Fleets which lacked the numbers to perform the devastating orbital bombardments that had brought Raxus Secundus to its end. But the Imperials would encounter only paltry, ill-informed resistance. The defense fleets of the assailed planets unprepared for the sudden rush of aggression the Imperials would show them. And even less prepared for the devastating weapons the battle groups would deploy to bring ruination to their worlds. Davik Thune had taken his time with the brutalization of the capital of the Confederacy. But when it came to these constituent worlds, he allowed no such dalliances, ordering his divided fleet to drive in through enemy resistance, drop their payloads of world-ending armaments, and then to depart for the rendezvous location. The lightning strike fashion of these bombings yielded immense results. On most worlds, at least. But a few, by one method or another, fended off these wounded wielders of woe. And one world in particular did far, far more.
Hypori. Yes, I almost said Tapori. Hypori.
The Confederacy burned that day, but from its ashes would rise a new monster. Though the Crimson Razors knew it not, they had awakened a sleeping giant. One of cold blood and pitiless steel. One which was all too accustomed to fighting hopeless wars against invaders of greater size, strength, and technology. It would come to be known as the Bane of Razors. But this monster would, in truth, be the bane of far more, both for this galaxy and the next.
Wow. And with that trap and the completion of that trap, the decapitation of the separatist leadership, separatist military command structure has been complete. They did something that the Galactic Republic could not do. They did something that Galactic Republic and the Jedi could not do. In one foul swoop, they destroyed the capital, they destroyed the leadership, they destroyed the military commander of the separatists. Wow. Now this makes everything, understandable into why they reactivated Sheelal, from his slumber. Because, like I said before, Sheelal is not trustworthy. He is prone to anger. He was even about to attack Count Dooku once when Count Dooku was saying that he's a droid. And, he's not reliable like General Grievous #2. So now I understand why they've come to this point where they would have to reactivate him. Because Count Dooku is desperate, as well as Darth Sidious. They're both desperate because the separatists have lost their government, they've lost their military command structure. They have no choice. They have to reactivate him. Huh. Wow.
Dooku's signal to Hypori was sent only minutes after he had confirmed General Grievous's death. The message carried aloft on hyperspace communication terminals, and arriving well before the incoming Imperial fleet.
What's that in the middle? I'm not entirely sure what that is, but okay.
The signal reactivated medical droids and awoke a facility which had lain dormant for nearly the entirety of the Clone Wars. Within, the living corpse of Quayman Jai Sheelal lay, dreaming in half-sleep, bathed in bacta and preserving fluids. Little more than a half-face, a brain, and a floating sack full of organs. But that did not last. An electrical current was forced through the fluid, jolting the organic remnants within, drawing out silent screams from the dreamer. He woke all at once, his every dream, every sleeping thought coming alive, and immediately clutched within the grip of his will. He would never release a single dream again, even as he was tested with a second, unnecessary volt of wakening charge. Now alive once more, the tank drained. The metal pedestal which made up his neck and torso being brought out into the air. He coughed and wheezed, mechanical and organic lungs working more sluggishly than the rest of his body.
So basically this guy is just a meat sack, with the organs and the brain and the face, whatever's left of the face, the neck and all these other, bits and pieces of his flesh or body or organs. Ugh, Yeah. Just like General Grievous, the second one.
But the automated process gave him no mercy, no time to acclimate. That was fine, for he desired none. No mercy, not from those who had taken him, who had betrayed him. For he had dreamed the only dream he had ever sought. For nearly 4 years he had seen her face, smelled her hair, felt their thumbs interlace.
This is not good. He remembers past events. He remembers his past life. He remembers the woman he loves. This is not good. Count Dooku, I don't know what you're going to say to him, but I don't think it's going to work. He remembers a lot. Yikes.
Both in the fear before combat and in the exaltation that came after. They had taken her, taken his memory of her from him. Never again. While the dreamt one could not ascend to the gods that awaited her, she lingered where she had been born. In his dreams. Dreams of war, dreams of love, and dreams of betrayal. Be it by the will of the Force, or by the spirit of his loss, or even by the regenerative properties of Kalish mines and the influence of the Bacta he had been submerged within. The general remembered it all. Remembered why he grieved, and by that, what he was. And he was no errand boy, no slave, no droid. In spite of this knowledge, his body was assembled around him like one. Internals swiftly placed inside his dismantled torso, armor sliding over his organ sac. Mechanical servos and actuators being plugged into his neck and chest, allowing the general to shudder as his limbs were reattached. Sparks of tingling pain shooting up through him as artificial nerves were connected to old, unused ports. The ruthless reconstruction took just over 10 minutes to complete. Grievous held parallel on a table-like mechanical rack, his arms and legs bound to either side of him in order to restrain his twitches and spasms as he rapidly adjusted.
This reminds me of, again, Star Wars The Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin Skywalker was being transformed into Darth Vader. You know, he was also tied with restraints on the operating table as they were connecting things to him and putting the new devices into his body, and then the final piece of resistance, the mask, you know, coming on. Yeah, it's taking me back there.
Reptilian eyes squinted into the medical lights which faced down on him, the only lights in that dark, cursed room. The final piece of his ensemble appeared, hovering over his face. It was his mask, the bone-white vestment descending like a perverse death shroud, hailing not the fall, but the rise of General Grievous. It squealed and sealed to what was left of his face before the table tilted forward within the room. Count Dooku was already waiting for him, though not in person. The Sith Lord appeared before his general under the sky-colored veneer of a hologram, standing and looking imperious as ever, if somewhat older and more maligned. "General Grievous, can you hear me?" he asked. There was a pause then, as the slitted pupils of the nearly droid general eyed the leader of the Confederacy.
I can, Count Dooku,
he said at length. "Good. It is good to see that you have recovered," said the Count. Grievous said nothing. "We have, unfortunately, little enough time to catch you up. After the successful Battle of Hypori, you suffered unforeseen complications during your resting cycle.
He did?
We were forced to intervene to save your life. But the procedure to do so has taken a very long time to complete.
It has?
Dooku lied.
How long?
Asked the general. 3 years by the galactic date. There is much work to be done. A new enemy has come among us, and already they have laid waste to Raxus Secundus. And I have reason to believe that they are en route to our factory worlds, including Hypori, even as we speak. They will arrive in a matter of days, if current estimates are accurate, said the Sith Lord. I have forwarded to you all the data we have on them, including Republic data that we have obtained from our secret contacts within the Senate. He continued before suddenly being cut off.
Rendezvous Lich Kumar,
said Grievous.
What?
Count Dooku attempted not to reveal anything when the name was spoken, but the narrowing of his eyes was not missed by the Kalish warlord. Who is that?
You're gonna lie to his face like that, huh? Count Dooku.
Asked the Count. The answer came slowly, as Grievous looked first to his right and then to his left, eyeing the restraints which held him. Enough to stop his spasms, but not enough to stop him.
She was the only thing that mattered.
The general growled, yanking free his right arm, breaking the shackle which held it, and then doing the same with his left. General, you are delusional after your long dormancy. I assure you there is no such person.
You lie. You lie through your teeth, Count Dooku,
said the Count of Sereno.
Do not.
The general spat, ripping free his legs from the table.
Speak of her.
Dooku scowled, stepping forward. Tread carefully now, General. Do not break with me over a fantasy. This Rendezvous Lich Kumar is nothing more than a dream, and we have enough to deal with within reality. Grievous glared with savage hate at the blue wraith, stalking forward and resting one of his multi-pronged feet onto the walking hollow emitter that the Count was using, drawing lines of clarity through the image of the Sith, like claw marks across a painting.
I agree,
said he, before stomping down and crushing the device. General, Dooku began, but then he was gone, and Grievous was alone. For a time, he did nothing, standing amidst the medical droids and dust of the abandoned facility he had been housed within. He was utterly still, the result of his droid body, which failed to breathe in and out as heavily as he felt he should. His systems self-regulating every second. And yet, his rage did not abate. Not until he released a mechanical howl of abject, fearsome hate. And he did not stop there. The general tore half the room to pieces, ripping the mechanical rack he had been held within off of the floor and throwing it, smashing medical droids against the walls with it.
What did they do to you? They're just doing their job, you know? Oh my gosh.
He destroyed his Bacta tank, crushed the control console attached to it, and tore the heads and limbs off of the flailing, panicking droids which were present, each attempting to flee the space, and none making it to the door. At last, he calmed and stilled after he finally dismembered the last of them and tossed its sparking torso into the overhead lamp, shattering it and leaving him in darkness. He took just a few moments after this to acclimate and to think. He straightened and looked around the sparking, smoking ruin which lay about him, locating the half of the room he had constrained himself from destroying. Grievous stalked over towards the computer panel behind the now scrapped emitter and pressed one of his thumbs against it. "Facility online, awaiting directives," said the voice of a tactical droid.
Disconnect all off-world communications systems. Sever them all. Deploy buzz droids to all the hardline communications centers and have them disabled immediately.
Yeah, he wants to make sure that Count Dooku or whoever else can't deactivate his droids. Yeah. Good job there.
Said the warlord. "As you order, General," said the voice.
What are our resource stores at currently?
He asked. "Resource stores are at full capacity. Droid garrison is at 4/10 capacity. Shall I begin production of additional units?" asked the facility intelligence.
Yes. Divert all B1 resources to other droid models. We are no longer able to sustain their use. Prioritize the construction of B2s and any other experimental variants that we are able to assemble. Prepare the maintenance and astromechanical droids to repurpose the B1 production facilities.
The warlord continued. "As you order, General. The communication towers are about to be permanently disabled. Do you wish to transmit any last messages?" the facility asked. Grievous paused then, looking at the mechanical thumb he had pressed against the console, hating it, hating everything about this place, and the way he had been remade. So much had gone wrong. It was time he began to set it right.
Yes. Send a text transmission to the Kali system in wild space. Broadcast it in the native language.
He said. "Roger, what shall the message be?" the droid mind asked.
Tell them, the Dreamer has awakened.
Okay, where is wild space? Is it in the outer rim of the galaxy, or is it in the, what do they call it? The unknown regions of the Star Wars Milky Way galaxy? I'm just wondering about that. Yeah. Okay, so the Dreamer has awakened. Sheelal is back in action as General Grievous. Whether he's General Grievous of the Confederacy or just General Grievous, I don't know yet. I don't know if he's going to actually be working for Count Dooku, in this war. I mean, the way he acted, the way he shut down that hologram communication, it just doesn't seem like he's in the mood to work with Count Dooku. And the fact that Count Dooku has been lying to his face, and he knows that he's lying to his face, I don't think he's going to be working with him. I think he's just going to go do it, alone. He's going to go out alone, do it alone, and figure himself out, and probably return back to wild space. I don't know. I just can't see him working with Count Dooku. Yeah. Count Dooku has to come with something very, good as a bargaining deal. To say, if you work with me in defeating the Imperium of Man, then I will give you back your life or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Okay, first Captain Vordran, Ship Captain Lyons. Okay.
Force Captain Vordran stood on the bridge of the Red Harbinger, one of the 10 strike cruisers of the Crimson Razor's assault fleet. Below deck, and on other ships, prepared and waiting for him to give the word in the event that they should be needed, were 3 squads of his battle brothers. But he knew they would likely not be needed for anything at all, for this mission would be over quickly once it began. He had been traveling for over a week, his strike cruiser and its accompanying escorts having braved the naked warp to arrive. And according to the still living navigators of the naval elements which accompanied them, they were only minutes from their destination at last.
We are clear on the plan?
Vordran asked the captain of the Red Harbinger, a mundane woman with slight augmentations who went by the name of Persava Lyons. She sat at her command throne, nodding as she eyed the hololithic displays which hovered over the front of her throne. "We are ready, my lord," she said, standing up and waving her hands, signaling the display to shrink down and be presented before them at waist level. "We will enter the system at the Lagrange point nearest to the planet, as dictated by the intelligence we managed to rip from the boarded enemy vessels. This will put us almost inside the planet's gravity well. From there, it's a short burn to planet Hypori. We'll prime and fire the 2-stage cyclonic torpedo in orbit as we use the planet to fuel a gravitational slingshot, which will bring us back to the Lagrange point, at which point we will depart. They have no idea when we will appear, so their planetary shields should be down when we arrive, as they were for other worlds. We'll ram right through any defensive fleet, and, barring the unexpected, this should be well and done within 15 minutes," said Persava. The captain nodded.
Good. But remember, Captain, most of our targets were already struck by the other battle groups. Hypori may not know when we are coming, but they will be ready,
cautioned the large, red-armored warrior. "Of course. I am sending our escorts ahead of us along with the light cruiser, the Bearer of Hatred, at full burn as soon as we arrive. They should be inside the shield radius in seconds. And if the planet managed to activate them, I have every faith that the Marines on board will be able to drop and disable their generators. Though it may delay us, our fleet is nimble, and we should be able to dance around the defense ships we find in system long enough for them to do their job, and for the operation to commence."
I like the plan. I do. I really do. Now let us see if you can implement it. Because there is a big difference between making a plan and doing the plan. Yeah, let's see.
Persava reassured. "All things considered, Force Captain, I think this is a blessing in disguise. It's not often that we have the good fortune of being able to emerge almost on top of our target. They will not stand a chance," she added.
Good. I'd like to wipe this alien stain from the galaxy quickly, and without cost beyond our ammunition, if possible.
Let's see what Sheelal is made out of. I want to see if he's anything, as good as General Grievous or maybe even better. Let's see.
Not one of these worlds is worth even a single life of my battle brothers. It is a shame that we even need to bother with them, but there can be only one answer to heresy,
the Force Captain intoned. "Do not worry. We will show them the Emperor's mercy. It is more than they deserve," said Ship Captain Lyons. "Captain, emerging from the warp in the next 30 seconds. Brace for re-emergence," sounded off one of the bridge officers. "Good. Tell the fleet to prepare to engage maximum thrust. We want to be in and out before they know what hit them." "Aye, aye, Captain,"
This is exciting.
said the same officer. All the while, Vordran looked forward, watching the twisting mists of white and blue speeding past his ship, before clarity and the blackness of space suddenly manifested. And there, in the center of their view, was the rocky brown world they had come to destroy. He had only seconds to admire it, however, before he was almost pitched from his feet. Arms out and waving, he grunted and stomped down.
What is happening? Report!
He bellowed.
The music is also building up. Oh, I love this. Yes, AFanWithTooMuchTime.
Not sure. Checking. Captain, we appear to be under attack! Yelled one of the sensors operators. How is that possible? We only just arrived! She yelled back. The ship bucked again, and from the front viewing ports, Vordran saw one of the escort's void shields flicker and die. The explosion it was absorbing overcoming its strength, then another, and another. It's a minefield, Captain! We emerged into a minefield! The officer called out a second later. 3 of our 4 escorts have lost all shields. Our own are taking a pounding, as are those of the Bearer of Hatred. Should we retreat, warp jump away?
There is no retreat!
The Force Captain roared. Deploy countermeasures! Begin shooting down those mines and launch whatever strike craft we can! They will clear our way! As the Force Captain said, we are committed! All ships, maximum burn! Captain Lyons yelled right afterwards. The Red Harbinger did as it was bade, as did the fleet around it. Anti-strike craft guns firing into the minefield around them as Thunderhawks and Fury interceptors wove about, desperate in their attempts to fend off the explosives drifting in the void. But it was working, and the battle group managed to shoot its way out as it raced with growing speed towards the brown sphere before them, and the black dots which stood between them. Captain, Xeno's contacts detected! 12 ships are between us and the planet! All of escort size or smaller! Ram through them! Do not stop! Ordered the captain. Ma'am, there is a fleet behind us as well! 35 ships now making to move around the minefield!
It just keeps coming. Oh my gosh.
The sensors operator relayed. Ignore them! By the time they get around those mines, we will already be in orbit of the planet! Begin geographic scans as soon as we are in range! Begin priming the 2-stager the moment we have the required parameters! Ordered Persava. Vordran could only watch as their ships continued to accelerate, unable to lend any tactical advice on a battlefield which was so different from what he was used to. He had to have faith in the captain and the ships. For now, they were truly committed to the fight. The escorts burned ahead, led by the light cruiser, which was putting everything it had into its engine strength. Its shields flagging, but intact. It made contact with the enemy ships first, sprinting through their outbound fire and smashing into one of their larger cigar-shaped ships. It began to break apart, and then exploded violently.
What was that?
The Force Captain exclaimed, watching the expanding fireball which consumed the Bearer of Hatred.
I really like Captain Vordran, you know. What was that? What's going on? That's all he can do to contribute to all of this. What's that? What's going on? The plan is not planning. The plan is not planning, guys. What are you going to do? What are you guys going to do?
The light cruiser emerged, shields utterly undone, ship bleeding scrap and fire into the void as it continued its full burn towards the planet. But as surprising as the disproportionate explosion had been, it was not as surprising as what happened next.
The Bearer of Hatred was rammed by two of the smaller capital ships of the enemy, the twin vessels veering into its path and each detonating with disproportionate force. "Fire ships!" exclaimed Persava as the leading escorts also collided with similar ships, doing
I love the space battle. AFanWithTooMuchTime. Yes, it's what I've been wanting for a long time.
as ordered and blowing apart in the resulting detonations. "What?" asked the Force captain. "Suicide ships! They're probably filled to the brim with the same kind of mines we just escaped from. All vessels, veer! Veer! Do not allow yourselves to be rammed by them, and do not ram them yourselves!" the captain said, spouting orders in a frenzy. The Bearer of Hatred exploded then, breaking apart and tumbling down towards the planet, burning the entire way. "No," Vordran muttered. The remaining ships attempted to evade, the last two escorts being just maneuverable enough to avoid the small targets. But the Red Harbinger, despite being extremely vast, was not nearly so able when it came to turning away. The deck pitched as one, and then two, and then three of the enemy ships managed to strike them, firing their less effective weapons even as they plowed into the shields and hulls on the power of their sublight engines. "Major damage sustained! Shields are down! I repeat, shields are down!" reported a female officer from within her alcove. "What is the condition of the priming sequence for the weapon?" Captain Lyons yelled. "Unchanged, ma'am. They are proceeding as planned, but we have major hull breaches along the port side of the Harbinger. The tech priests report that they will need 20 minutes at least to repair the damage to the shield array."
Forget the shields. Just continue on with the plan.
"And what about the enemy fleets? Both of them?" Persava demanded. "The fleet closest to us is turning to pursue. The other has just finished circumventing the minefield, but they are going around the other side of the planet. It appears they plan to intercept us on the other side," the sensors officer reported. "Then we will deal with them then. Keep the engines going and keep me appraised of the situation with the torpedo," ordered the captain. "Scans have commenced. Parameters are being verified as we speak," said a crewman. The last three ships of the battle group dropped into high orbit over Hypori.
But you know, with the cyclonic torpedoes, the Exterminatus torpedoes, I mean, does it really matter where you shoot them on the planet? Won't it still just affect the entire planet and destroy its atmosphere, destroy all life that's on the planet and turn it into a dead rock? I mean, do you really need to triangulate a target location for the torpedo? Yeah, I'm just wondering about that. Okay. I'm liking this battle. Captain Vordran, oh my gosh. What? What was that? What? That's all you can say in this entire show. What? This guy.
Visible from the ground by the streaking fires that left their overworked engines, creating a trio of blazing tears across the sky, as though the world were being clawed by some enormous, invisible beast. Slingshot beginning, adjusting engine strength, T-minus 3 minutes before contact with the second enemy fleet, said the helmsman. "Damn it, those vessels are likely fire ships as well. We cannot survive another collision with them. What's the time left on the priming sequence? When can we fire?" barked Persava. "Priming is nearly complete. Firing of the two-stage cyclonic torpedo will begin in just under 4 minutes.
Okay, so they need to still prime it. Okay, I didn't hear that before. I didn't listen to that before. Okay, so they have to prime the weapon, and once it's primed and active, then it can launch. Okay, alright.
Reported the comms officer. "That's not good enough! We have virtually no options for maneuverability in this orbit. spat the captain. Ma'am.
Why didn't they prime it when they were in the warp? I mean, they could have done it then. You could have primed it then, and as soon as you jump out of the warp, then you just fire the torpedo at the planet as the moment you drop out. But anyways, it's too late now.
We will not be able to fire if we do not remain at least this close, another officer said. We won't be able to fire at it at all if our ship is destroyed. She snapped back.
How much lower can this ship go?
Asked Vordran. Maybe 3 or 4 kilometers down? Any more at this speed and the atmosphere will tear us to ribbons, said the helmsman.
That isn't much, but it should be enough.
Persava, bring us close enough to the enemy ships that it seems we will collide, then bank down at the last possible moment, the Space Marine advised.
It is the only way,
he added. It is impossible, Force Captain, she answered in return, a thick line of sweat weaving down her face. We are fast, but we cannot maneuver like that. We just don't have those kinds of thrusters, she said.
Yes, we do,
said the Space Marine.
Just not on our engines. Tilt the Harbinger sideways and use the recoil from the ship's weapons in conjunction with our maneuvering thrusters to veer us down.
Yay! Yay! Finally, you've contributed. Instead of just saying, what? What? What was that? Well done, Captain. Well done.
He said. She bit her lip, thinking for a moment, before nodding. Make it so. Order the gun crews on the right side of the ship to disengage the recoil dampening systems. We need all the shake we can get to make this work. Helmsman, stay on it. Aye, aye, Captain, the helmsman said, gripping his controls more tightly. The same orders were relayed to the escorts as well, and minutes later, they could see the Confederate ships speeding towards them, cutting fainter lines of fire in the atmosphere as they rushed to meet. Steady, said the captain. The enemy fleet was now beginning to converge, targets clearly chosen as their globular clusters began to shift into nearly linear formations. Steady, she reiterated. The enemy ships began to open fire, bright green and red lines streaking past the Imperial vessels and splashing against their prows. Now, fire! She shrieked, and the cannons on the starboard-facing broadsides of the Red Harbinger unleashed their fury, aiming at nothing but succeeding in jerking the ship towards the planet, the escorts veering down on their own engine power alone. The Harbinger and its fellow ships were surrounded in cloaks of fire as the atmosphere began to burn around them. But the ships held strong enough, unable to remain forever, but not needing to. The daring maneuver was nearly enough to evade the enemy vessels. Nearly. But as they ducked down, the Confederate ships sought to follow. One of the small vessels clipping the side of the Harbinger and tearing away a part of its hull. The struck craft spun up and back for a moment, twirling in the barrier between world and space, before exploding in a cascade of detonations, but not close enough to damage the strike cruiser. Yes! The captain howled, and the bridge crew released beleaguered cheers, especially when the enemy ships of the Second Fleet began to collide with the pursuing First Fleet.
Guys, I will only celebrate when you fire the torpedo. That's the only time I'll celebrate. Until then, anything can happen. Anything.
Exploding and catching other vessels in the wake of the detonations. All right, countdown on the torpedo, she called. T-minus 40 seconds to firing, said the comms officer.
40 seconds is gonna feel like an hour.
Good. Return to standard orbit. Let's drop this judgment on them and get out of here before more show...
Persava began to say, "Captain, planetary shields just went up!" Came the panicked cry of the sensor's operator. Vordran felt his guts drop as a flickering field of light suddenly appeared before them, directly in the path as they made their way up.
What was that? No.
Without a word, he took the helmet cradled under his arm and slid it on before grasping the side of the command throne with both hands. "Burning throne! Brace for..." Persava began to yell before the three ships of the battle group collided head first with Hypori's particle shielding, breaking apart against the energetic skin of the world's defense, repurposed into a trap they had all too eagerly jumped into.
You know, that reminds me of Star Wars Rogue One, when the X-Wing fighters were attacking the Empire's data center planet. You know that planet? I forgot what it was called. But yeah, you know, they were making a descent into the planet, and then the planetary shield reactivated, and then they had to ascend as soon as possible before they would crash onto the shield. Yeah, it's something similar to that right here. Very nice.
The two escorts were smashed, and the Red Harbinger was broken in half. All began to descend, free-falling to the waiting world below them, their wings clipped, their broken bodies falling to the earth.
You guys are now the torpedo. Detonate the torpedo right now. You guys are the torpedo now. There's no point in launching it. The entire ship, whatever left of it, is the torpedo.
Captain Vordran! Please wake up, Captain Vordran! Said a distant voice, a voice Vordran could barely understand. But it simply kept calling him, over and over, and with each repetition it became clearer and clearer. He blinked blindness out of his eyes and saw that his helmet lenses were cracked and flickering. With a groan, he reached up, feeling that his body was broken, but not enough to stop him from moving. As he disconnected his helmet and tossed it aside, he automatically ran an internal report on his own condition. Rib plates cracked, fractured across most of his body. Mild internal bleeding, 3 dislodged teeth in the back right of his mouth, and he'd bitten off the very tip of his tongue. All in all, he was surprised that it was not worse, and with the help of the Marine who was standing over him, he rose, armor screeching in protest.
Wait, if you're in this condition after the crash, what about everyone else who is not wearing power armor? I don't want to know. Never mind.
Report. He managed to grunt as he began to look around. He was still on the bridge, though he was now on the roof. All around him were the gore-laden smears which once composed the bridge crew. He winced as he spotted the bruised, ruined remains of Captain Persava's severed head, which had somehow come free of her body in the crash. "Sergeant Kandrin reporting in," the man said obediently. "We are on the planet, on Hypori. My squad is half gone. 2 are dead, 3 are in trance or too heavily wounded to be moved easily. My 4 remaining Marines are up and mobile, but no one man got through this crash unscathed. The conditions of the other 2 squads are unknown, but I would not count on ever hearing from them again, sir." The sergeant reported. "What about the mortal crew?" Vordran asked. "Well, maybe a few survived somehow, but what you are seeing around you is all I found so far."
Yikes.
"And Brother Librarian Dendran? What of him?" the Force commander asked. The sergeant could only shrug.
I haven't seen him yet. He is likely dead or unconscious, given that he has not reached out to any of us thus far. Either way, we have more pressing issues than locating our would-be navigator," said Sergeant Kandrin. "And why is that?" asked Vordran. "It's best if you come see. Can you move?" asked the Marine. Vordran nodded. "Well, enough. Lead the way," he said. Kandrin led Vordran out of the bridge and to a nearby airlock hatch. The space was not only upside down, but it was also tilted at a sharp angle, and climbing up through it was agony. That agony only increased once they exited, the cold wind of the mostly barren world whipping at their faces. "Come, we must climb," said Kandrin, and Vordran followed without complaint, though he also considered that what he was being shown would need to be damned important to go through all of this. And it was, for soon the Force commander understood why he had been brought outside and to the top of their crushed ship, buried head first in the stone of the planet. Keeping watch there, Vordran found the other 4 able-bodied Marines of Kandrin's squad. Each obviously injured, their power armors lined with cracks and dried blood. But what was most of note was what they were watching. Vordran stood up as tall as he could and surveyed the area around them. The craggy planet stretched out before the Marine, mountains spiking against the distant pale blue horizon, and the smoldering, burning wrecks of his battle group laying in pieces all around them, scattered out for a couple of miles in every direction. And beyond them was a gleaming ocean. No, not an ocean. An army. A vast machine army, composed not of the spindly, nearly worthless units that Vordran and the others had encountered in mass before, but of the larger, more tactically sound blue variants that had acted as support and shock forces. Among them were tanks of various kinds, from the one-legged, spider-like units which carefully picked their way through the army, to the longer, ovoid vehicles which ground across the terrain on encompassing tank treads. And they seemed to be closing in from every direction.
Man, Sheelal, isn't this overkill? Oh, wow. Wow, you're really prepared. You came over-prepared even, I would say that. Guys, Force Captain Vordran, I think you should activate the Cyclonic Torpedo if it's still there, if it's still ready to be activated. Because I'm sure by now it's primed. So if it's still there, activate it and you would have done your service for the Emperor. Yeah.
Filth and blood, the Force Captain cursed. Indeed. What's the plan, Captain? Asked the Sergeant. Vordran paused for a long few seconds, eyeing the approaching forces and the wreckage which surrounded them. We've no choice but to start searching, he said through bloody lips. Searching for what, brother Captain? Asked Kandrin. An astropath. Or any other kind of psyker who can send a message. We were entirely undone here, Sergeant. This enemy, whatever it is, predicted our every move from start to finish. We must warn the chapter. We must warn Davik Thune. If we cannot, we will have no chance of rescue, and our failure will be utter and complete. The words were like knives to the other Marines, just as they were for Vordran, who spoke them. We must not fail! Can we still detonate the torpedo? Can we at least complete the mission? Asked the sergeant, voice almost frantic. Perhaps. Perhaps not. We will search for that as well. One of your men will remain here to provide intel on the approaching enemy. The rest shall split into 2 squads. I will lead the search for a Psyker. You will lead the search for the cyclonic torpedo. Keep radio silence unless absolutely necessary. They may not know that we yet live, and we will need every single advantage available to us if we plan to continue living. Understood, Sergeant? The Marine snapped a salute. Yes, brother Captain, let us begin, he said. But Vordran was not looking at him, and paused, suddenly seeming distracted as he stared into the distant but encroaching ocean of abominations. For a brief moment, he felt that he had seen something. A pale, white figure, like a towering wraith amid the metal men. Its form flickering and waving in the wind. He had seen it, and he was sure, for some reason, that it had seen him.
Look at that. Look at this image. 10 foot tall. Crazy.
Force Captain? Asked Kandrin. Yes, let us begin as soon as we can. Meet back here at 1 interval, or once we have found what we are looking for. Move out, Marines!
I've always been the hunter, nothing on my tail. But there was something in you I knew could make that change. To capture a predator, you can't remain the prey. You have to become an equal in every way. So look in the mirror and tell me, who do you see? Is it still you, or is it me? Become the beast, we don't have to hide. Do I terrify you? Do you feel alive? Do you feel the hunger? Does it howl inside? Does it terrify you? Or do you feel alive? Splinters of my soul cut through your skin and burrow within, and burrow within. Splinters of my soul cut through your skin and burrow within, and burrow within. So embrace the darkness, that will help you see that you can be limitless and fearless if you follow me. We are the lions in a world of lies. We are the predators, the hunters, the hunters, the hunters. Become the beast, we don't have to hide. Do I terrify you? Do you feel alive? Do you feel the hunger? Does it howl inside? Does it terrify you? Or do you feel alive? Splinters of my soul cut through your skin and burrow within, and burrow within. Splinters of my soul cut through your skin burrow within, and burrow within. Senators of my soul cut through your skin, and burrow within, and burrow within. Senators of my soul cut through your skin, and burrow within, and burrow within. Do you feel the hunger, the desert howling inside? Does it terrify you, or do you feel alive?
Yes, guys, that was Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 31, The Dreamer Awakens, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. This episode was nice. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it from the beginning to the end. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it, especially with the space battles, you know, with General Grievous, and the space battle with Force Captain Vordran and Captain Lyons, you know. Their plan, it was an amazing plan. It was a beautiful plan, you know. Catch them by surprise, bomb the planet and leave the system as soon as possible. It was amazing. It's just that the plan was not planning at the end. It was not planning anymore, you know, because what's his name again? Sheelal already prepared himself. He was ready for you guys. And really, it was just so funny. Just hearing them all, you know, panicking and debating on what they should do next and how they should do it. and one, you know, part of the information coming after another about new fleets popping up on the screens, mines in the vicinity, the shields are reactivating, everything. It was just downhill, you know, downhill for these guys from the moment they dropped out of the warp. It was amazing. I loved that space battle. And yeah, General Grievous, the original General Grievous, Sheelal has returned. He was considered to be a threat because you know, he's not trustworthy in the opinion of Count Dooku, and he's prone to his fits of rage. So yeah, it was a risk that Count Dooku had to take by getting this guy back into the battle, because, you know, the second General Grievous has been killed. He was lured into a trap by Brother Tassion, the tech marine of the Crimson Razors. They had to sacrifice an entire cruiser along with all the crew members and civilians that were on board the ship just to take out General Grievous. And yeah, you know, they succeeded. General Grievous number 2 is dead. General Grievous number 1 is back in the battlefields. I don't know if he's fighting for the Confederacy or is he fighting for himself. That is yet to be determined. I guess we'll know about that, you know, in later episodes. And yeah, it's a surprise for me. Really, this is a shocker for me. The fact that the General Grievous that we have known since Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars is not the real General Grievous. You know, the original General Grievous was in stasis this whole time. Shocking. Really, that is just shocking. And yeah, the Separatists, government and military have both been decapitated. Therefore, you know, the Separatist, whatever is left of it, the Confederacy of Independent Systems is like a headless chicken. It doesn't have any direction politically or any direction with the military. Count Dooku I've never seen him as someone who would command large armies or fleets. You know, he's just not that type of person. He is the CEO. These are the types of responsibilities he you know, gives over to the managerial positions of his company, and now his company is bereft of managerial rolled people because they're all dead. All his military commanders are either dead or missing in action. And his most powerful, most influential, most capable and experienced is dead. And that's General Grievous. And now he has to bring out this guy from the freezer and hoping that he's going to work for him. And it just doesn't seem it's going to happen that way. So yeah, you know, Count Dooku's in trouble with the Confederacy. And the place where Sheelal comes from, Wild Space. I think I need to search this up on Google where it is exactly. Is it in the Outer Rim, or is it in the unknown regions, or is it somewhere within, you know, one of the arms of the galaxy that have been explored and colonized by the rest of the galaxy? I'm just wondering about where exactly is this place. And I didn't write down the name of the species, but I will come back to this video and just, you know, listen carefully to the name of the species that Sheelal comes from. Yeah. But yeah, guys, this was good. This was really, really good. I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed the battle with General Grievous and Tech Marine Brother Tassion. And of course, like I said before, the space fleet around Hypori. Yes. Oh man, that was good. It was so funny. Really. Force Captain Vordran is so funny to me. What was that? What? Oh gosh, that guy was funny. Guys, yeah, that is it. That is it for today. Thank you again to AFanWithTooMuchTime for producing such entertaining content. I really did enjoy episode 31. Guys, remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm not going to say next week because I don't know what's going to happen. I'll just say next time. Yeah, I'll see you when I see you. Okay, bye-bye.